Well, good morning. Good morning, and welcome to the Morning Report. My name is William Lawson. The Morning Report is a production of fightbackmedia.com, fightbackmedia, media.com, fightbackmedia.com, and fightbackmediatv.com. I hope that you are doing well this Tuesday morning. Well, always a butt ton of stuff going on. Oh, and a buttload is actually a real measurement. Is 64 gallons, which is a lot of liquid. Or yeah, a lot of anything. Um, we are going to continue the talk on what gets me, frankly, is that I've not heard much more ado about a guy running for president who's not running for president than Ron DeSantis. And like I always say, and I'll say this every episode, and I've done over 600 of these. If you're watching, if you're new, I've got some new people watching. I've done over 600 of these, so I've said this before, and you can research them all. That people will always, the left especially, will always tell you who they're afraid of, because that's the person they will continue to attack at every single turn. And Ron DeSantis is one of those people. Even former President Trump sees Ron DeSantis as a threat, and we'll talk a little bit about that too. We mentioned the COVID lab leak theory yesterday in the last show, and this idea that a lot of us got, our social media accounts shadow banned, suspended, demonetized, deplatformed, just for mentioning that this might be something. This might be something that we ought to look into. And now that it's a thing, we're going to learn a little bit more about what happened over at one of the three-letter networks concerning this particular Wuhan virus lab leak. All right, we'll take a little break. We'll be back with more of the program right after these messages. So is it okay now, because it was, during the Trump administration, it is okay to talk about the president's
yeah. We talked about mental health elderly, so let's talk about this guy's mental health.
The president's mental acuity, because there's sometimes where it seems to be lacking. Have you seen?
Sometimes.
Yeah, sometimes it's especially bad. I'm talking about sometimes it's like really bad. Like, have you seen the picture?
I was told not to take any questions.
I was told not to take any questions. They're going to be mad at me.
They're going to be mad at me.
Mr.
President, are you the president, or are you five?
You see, what I want. See, the next question is, excuse me,
I was told to call on what you call for NBC. Who's telling you to call on?
That's the question that we ought to be asking. Who's telling you this?
I don't understand why nobody won't ask that question.
Is Jen Psaki actually the president?
Who's telling you to call on these people in the media?
Is Jen Psaki actually the president?
Probably so.
All right, according to Town Hall, what might be the least surprising development to come from mainstream media is grappling with the U.S. Department of Energy's conclusion that a lab leak is the most likely origin of COVID-19. It turns out CNN staff and reporters were told to ignore the possibility of its converge on the pandemic. Now, there's a lot wrong with this. I mentioned the other week, I have a student that believes that he is getting good information because he's got the CNN app on his phone. And I thought to myself, 20 years ago, maybe 25 years ago, you were doing okay. Not anymore. Now, I didn't have this discussion without an argument for all sorts of reasons. But in order not to run down leads related to the lab leak in China, came according to fresh reporting from Fox News Digital, from First Facts Network, and then President Jeff Zucker. His reasoning, it was a Trump talking point. The reason Zucker said don't look at it because it's a Trump talking point. Trump derangement syndrome was so prevalent at CNN that it apparently literally made them ignore news to avoid lending to any credibility to Donald Trump, even when he was on the right track and since been vindicated for pointing to China and a lab leak as the point of origin for the pandemic. This revelation came from, quote, a well-placed CNN insider, according to Fox News Digital. In the early months of the pandemic, then CNN President Jeff Zucker would not allow his network to chase down any lab leak story because he believed it was a Trump talking point. According to the well-placed CNN insider, people are slowly waking up from the fog, the insider told Fox Digital. It's kind of crazy that we didn't chase it harder. Those Zuckers, tenure as CNN chief, he pulled what was once widely seen as a straight news organization to an anti-Trump operation. CNN bent over backwards to knock down what former President Trump and members of his administration said, lending credibility to the lab leak theory, as the White House was deemed a nemesis by the network. Not only did CNN seemingly let political hatred blind its own news judgment, it also let the network to reportedly intentionally mislead its viewers and readers, or what's left of them, into thinking that the possibility of a lab leak was disinformation, and the result of what the network often claimed was President Trump's racism and xenophobia. But as we reported, since the beginning of the pandemic, when the Trump administration officials raised the possibility, a lab leak is the best conclusion because that's where the facts lead. No thanks to the secrecy and interference of the Chinese Communist Party, the facts were more difficult to come by than they should have been. But a lab leak, while the federal bureaucracy and the mainstream outlets have taken their sweet time recognizing it, it didn't need to be and should not have been suppressed. Outlets at CNN apparently did it anyway. Not for nothing, but this revelation comes as CNN's current staff launch a new wave of attacks against Fox News for being, quote, nothing more than an extension of the GOP, than a credible news organization with the mission of informing viewers and allowing them to arrive at their own decisions. According to one of the senior media reporters, really, CNN? Really? The network that reportedly refused to report what were newsworthy developments about an emerging international story that would change the globe because it sounded something like the sitting president of the United States was saying. Perhaps CNN is not the best messenger to be accusing other news networks of not informing viewers and allowing them to arrive at their own decisions. The fact is, we may never know the full extent of how and why government agencies, experts, and others in the mainstream media chose to suppress what began as a viable hypothesis and now has been deemed as the most likely origin of COVID by federal agencies, but there are some major mea culpa needed. Too bad we're unlikely to hear any introspective apologies. So when Jeff Zucker of CNN decides that he's not going to allow any reporting that investigates the Wuhan virology lab as the source of COVID-19, and again the genesis, the nexus of what happened to the planet. That we were just simply going to go on the story that some guy ate a bat in a wet market and half the world died. That's what we're going to go with. Wow, CNN. That is absolutely amazing. It's a damn shame. How they have viewers now, I don't know. How they have readers to their website now, I don't know. because we said this before, and we kept saying this. Wait, the truth will come out, and the truth will indict the guilty. CNN and MSNBC, they are the guilty. Are we going to make them pay? Are we going to cause them enough misery to make them pay? I think they deserve it. We'll be back right after these messages. Well, hey everybody, my name is Willie Lawson, and you guys know that I do a lot of stuff on the internet. And you may think with what's happening on Twitter and what's happening on Facebook and what happened to Parler that the mainstream social media sources are really trying to rid themselves of conservative voices. And you'd be right. They most certainly are. But you know what? It isn't as bad as you think it is. It's worse. But there are people who are willing to be platformed for free speech. One of those places is freedomforum.website. Freedomforum.website. You can go there and speak your mind. So come join us. Enjoy the freedom. Enjoy the fun. If you are a true blue conservative, small businesses are near and dear to your heart. They are the lifeblood of our life and economy. I believe this, and that's why my florist is not a website or phone number. My florist is Blooming Days Flower Shop, Tampa's premier flower shop. At 11618 North Florida Avenue here in Tampa, Florida, and at 6835 State Road 54 in Newport Richey. Call Christine at 813-933-1942 and at 727-232-6900. She can also be reached on the web at www.bloomingdays.com. One of the things that I get asked most is where can I get information that is not tainted with liberal bias, especially here in the Tampa Bay area. Well, now I have the answer. tbctampa.com, a website by and for Tampa area conservatives. Tampa's leading conservative voices speak freely at tbctampa.com. And you can too. So join the fun and enjoy the freedom at tbctampa.com. My name is Willie Lawson, and this is the Morning Report. Well, hi, this is the Morning Report. My name is Willie Lawson. The Morning Report is a production of fightbackmedia.com, 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 and fightbackmediatv.com. Again, we trust that you are well today. I know that a lot of you think that the morning report's in the bag for Ron DeSantis. Well, I'll tell you what, from a purely personal standpoint, I hope DeSantis doesn't run for president. Why? Because I'd rather have him as governor. And I was having a conversation with my son a bit ago, and he said, you know what? It's probably time that people in America start looking at governors as being more important than presidents. That really lends back to how we're supposed to be thinking about this anyway. So we here in our house are hoping that Ron DeSantis does not declare that he's running for president in 2024. We're hoping that he stays our governor for those following years and get some stuff, get some stuff pushed and get some stuff done. There is something that on tomorrow, on Wednesday, we're going to have to discuss. I'm going to try like heck over the next few days to get the author or the person pushing this Senate bill in the Florida Senate onto this program to explain themselves, because I'm not happy with it. It's Senate Bill 1316, and there's a section of it that supposedly requires bloggers to register with the state of Florida if they are going to write negative things about people who are in office in the state of Florida, and that is just not acceptable. I want to get into it now. It's just not acceptable. My friend Paul Swanson, my ride or die here at Fightback Media, has also written some articles that you can get at the swansonreport.locals.com. And no, that this idea that bloggers have to register who they work for and how much, what they're getting paid when they write something negative about our administration, whether it's Ron DeSantis or whomever, doesn't really matter. Is something that just cannot fly. And Brodeur, who's the senator who proposed this, who's backing it, he's going to have to come here and explain himself, because we're just not going to let this go. All right. But we hope that Ron DeSantis doesn't run for president. A lot of you think he's going to. So there are many things to comment on about Donald Trump's 2024 presidential run. It's not as clearly as captivating as it was in 2016. It's not as novel for sure, but that can be expected. He's a former president, and the whole outsider label really no longer applies to him. He was as inside can get, right? So he must also deal with the pending 2024 announcement of supposedly of Florida Governor Ron DeSantis, who can run as an outsider and is less boisterous than the former president, and so far much less polarizing. Now, people will say that, but I think here in the state of Florida, fairly polarizing, although won by 20 points. The left hates the dude. That doesn't make it someone polarizing. Won by 20 points over a popular Democrat and a former governor in Charlie Crist. He's not as polarizing amongst the GOP base, though that might be shifting as the more loudmouth Trump supporters have tried to sell the line that DeSantis is some sort of closet progressive. Like my friend Matt Vespa, I could, end up voting for either of these guys, whoever wins the nomination. Because what conservatives have to remember is that what's important is to win. We want to get as close as we can to somebody that we agree with and that we can walk with. That's where the 80-20 rule comes in. But we have to win. Another term of Joe Biden or some Joe Biden lookalike or Joe Biden act like is simply not something that we should be trying to survive. Not at all. Not at all. Um, so the nicknames were the linchpin of the 2016 campaign. From Little Marco to Lion Ted. Trump turned candidate. Trump turned candidates once considered prime presidential material into punchlines. Sort of falling flat with DeSantis. Some of them don't resonate or click, and he's barking up the wrong tree concerning the COVID lockdowns. His team is brainstorming better attack lines against the Florida Republican, some of which hit below the belt. Literally, as the Daily Beast noticed, Bloomberg has the rest of the story. Here it is. Holed up in his resort in Palm Beach, Florida, former President Donald Trump spends many mornings golfing, which is cool. Then the afternoons plots his political comeback. Maybe he'll shoot videos on policy proposals for his latest presidential campaign, but much of his and his team's time is spent bemoaning his lack of coverage by Fox News and other cable networks, griping about his 2020 reelection defeat, something he's very much not letting go of, and workshopping new nicknames for his chief rival in the GOP politics, Florida Governor Ron DeSantis. Trump allies seem set on Ron DeSanctimonious, even though others around him don't think it's a bullseye. Some of the new ideas that the president entertained was Ron dishonest, Ron the establishment, or even Tiny D, to be Tenacious D. His team has spent weeks trying to dig up dirt on DeSantis' record as governor, his wife Casey, and a former television journalist, his year teaching at a boarding school in Georgia, and his record as a member of Congress, including support for raising the U.S. retirement age and partly privatizing Medicare as part of then Speaker Paul Ryan's conservative budget plan. Tiny D. That for real? It's something that should be that no one should be shocked about, I guess. It's an unwarranted throwback, however, to the infamous hands debate during the 2016 conservative political action conference. At that moment, the president race became that kind of contest. Marco's got little hands, so you know what that means, right? Ridiculous. I want to make sure that Fight Back Media is always a forum by which we're going to talk about all of it. So we're not going to take sides now. I don't know if I won't say that I got in trouble, but let me back up. After the primaries were over, the Republican convention had not happened. And I remember saying on one of my programs that I wasn't backing anybody at this point. We would have to see who came out of the convention. Somebody, actually, I know who exactly who it is, but we're not going to talk about it here. Reported to a reporter, to William Marsh, a reporter of the Tampa Bay Times at the time, actually was Tampa Tribune at the time, that I had broken my loyalty oath to the Republican Party because at the time I was a member of the Hillsborough County Republican Executive Committee, and that I had broken my oath. William Marsh, the reporter, called me. I don't believe he told me who it was, but I found out or figured it out. And I said that that's foolishness because the Republicans at that point didn't have a nominee. Like now, the Republicans do not have a nominee. They won't have a nominee until the convention nominates someone. And at that point, it was the very same thing. So there was even then this weird sort of hero worship that I was disturbed by. And it turned out that I was right. The hero worship is a problem because we can't sit and have discussions about policy like this. Like, I am a fan of my governor. I think my governor is doing a great job. But this new bill that we're going to talk about Wednesday that requires bloggers to register with the state before they can say something negative about those who work for the state. That's ridiculousness, foolishness, and should be walked away from and apologized for, or at least explained for sure. I don't have such a worship hero mentality that I think that everything this person does or says is for a great reason and we should just go along and be loyal. It's not how this works for me. And it shouldn't be how it works for you either. You can be a supporter of President Trump, but you better have some really good policy reasons why. Some really good policy reasons why. Shouldn't you? I think you should. I definitely think you should. We're gonna take a little break and then we're gonna talk about drag shows. Yay, drag shows. When we get back from these messages, be right back. So is it okay now? Because it was, during the Trump administration, it is okay to talk about the president's.
Yeah, we talked about mental health elderly, so let's talk about this guy's mental health.
The president's mental acuity, because there's sometimes where it seems to be lacking. Have you seen?
Sometimes.
Yeah, sometimes it's especially bad. I'm talking about sometimes it's like really bad. Like, have you seen the picture?
I was told not to take any questions.
I was told not to take any questions. They're going to be mad at me.
They're going to be mad at me.
Mr.
President, are you the president or are you five?
You see, what I want. See, the next question is, excuse me,
I was told to call on what you call for NBC. Who's telling you to call on?
That's the question that we ought to be asking. Who's telling you this?
I don't understand why nobody won't ask that question.
Is Jen Psaki actually the president?
Who's telling you to call on these people in the media?
Is Jen Psaki actually the president?
Probably so.
All right, my name is Willie Lawson, and this is the Morning Report. Again, the Morning Report is a collection of fightbackmedia.com, 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 fightbackmediatv.com. Everybody talked a lot about drag shows, but here's the deal. We don't want kids at drag shows. Fine, have drag shows for adults in nightclubs, whatever. Nobody cares. See, there's been a lot of talk about drag shows, but the fact of the matter is that nobody cares. And nobody cared before, as long as there weren't babies there, as long as there weren't toddlers there. As a reporter for NBC, Out assured us that drag is an art form that conservatives want to limit, while posting a 1977 yearbook photo of Tennessee Governor Bill Lee at a Powder Puff football game. Exactly the same, right? No. But what about the conservatives who watch MASH and laughed at Klinger wearing a dress? Exactly the same thing, right? No, not at all. Not at all. Not at all. This right here, I'm going to show right now, is supposed to be a family-friendly drag show at Christmas time. What do you think?
Are you confused yet? Minty fresh. I had sex with my father's boss. in my father's office. What's your favorite part?
Nothing.
Well, I slept with my stepfather's co-worker in our RV over Thanksgiving.
Now, Mike Singleton, an NBC former senior executive, tweets, Laura Trump models, quote, with quotations around it, at Mar-a-Lago. Observation. There's a very fine line between this and a drag queen show. Here's Laura Trump modeling. This is the level of hate and disparagement they have against not only Trump, but for conservatives and Christians in general. And these are the people who are in very important positions when it comes to media. This is what we're up against. So we need not budge from what's correct, and we got to be smart. We got to be clever, and we got to be forthright and true and honest. Because if we are, we can defeat them. My name is Willie Lawson. This is the Morning Report. Morning Report is a production of fightbackmedia.com, 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 and fightbackmediatv.com. Until we see you again, go out there and learn something, love somebody, and for goodness sakes, y'all take care of yourself. We'll see you when we see you. Bye-bye now.